Why do powerful people never explain themselves? Why do kings, tyrants, and leaders stay silent when accused? In a world where everyone rushes to defend, justify, and clarify, Machiavelli would tell you this: the moment you defend yourself, you have already lost. In the courts of Florence, I learned a cruel truth. Defense is the language of the weak. The powerful never explain. They endure in silence, while their enemies burn with curiosity. To defend yourself is to say, I fear your opinion more than I trust my strength. And in that moment, you surrender your crown. Today I will show you why the greatest act of power is not to fight back, but to remain untouchable. This is my greatest lesson. Never defend yourself. They say the truth needs no defense. And yet I have watched kings fall not because they lied, but because they tried to explain. I have seen rulers crumble under the weight of their own words. Men of intellect and virtue lose power, not in battle, but in speech. The moment you defend yourself, you step down from your throne and stand before the mob as their equal. And once you do that, you are no longer feared, you are judged. You see, defense is a confession disguised as courage. The act of defending yourself is an admission that you care what they think. And in power, to care is to bleed. Those who rule, those who command, those who influence, must understand one thing. People respect silence far more than explanation. When you defend, you accept their accusation as worthy of your response. But when you ignore, you deny it even the dignity of being considered real. In my time I watched dukes and princes torn apart by rumors. Some ran to the pulpit, desperate to justify their actions, to clean their names with words. But words are water, they wash nothing, they only spread the stain. The more they spoke, the more people listened, and the more the crowd began to believe the whispers. For every word spoken in defense is a seed planted in the soil of doubt, and doubt, my friend, grows faster than truth ever could. When I served in the Florentine court, I learned that silence is the sharpest weapon a man can wield. The man who says nothing commands curiosity. His enemies grow anxious, his allies grow protective, and the crowd invents 1,000 stories in his favor. But the man who explains himself, he gives his enemies something solid to strike, a wall to throw their stones against. The silent man is mist, he cannot be touched. The defensive man is flesh, he can be wounded. Imagine this: two rulers accused of the same crime. One rushes forward, heart on sleeve, desperate to prove his innocence. The other stands still, unshaken, his face unreadable. Who looks guilty? The one who pleads his case, or the one who acts as if no accusation could ever touch him? The world does not judge by truth, it judges by appearance. And the man who defends himself looks small, uncertain, and afraid. The man who stays silent looks powerful, unmovable, divine. Defense is the tool of those who have already lost control. It is the reaction of the hunted, not the hunter. The lion does not explain his roar to the gazelle. The storm does not justify itself to the village, it destroys. Power does not ask for understanding, it demands acceptance. When you defend yourself, you shift from being the master of perception to the servant of it. You allow others to dictate the terms of your reality, and you lose the one thing no ruler can afford to lose: control over the story. Do you know why kings wear crowns and sit above others? It's not merely tradition, it's psychology. Height commands perception. The higher you sit, the less reachable you appear. But when you defend yourself, you lower your throne, bringing yourself to the level of your accuser. You abandon your crown to fight in the mud. And in doing so, you lose the illusion that made you powerful in the first place. For power is not only about force, it is about distance. You must remain above their noise. In the art of power, distance creates mystery, and mystery breeds fear. To defend yourself is to eliminate that mystery. You reveal your thoughts, your emotions, your vulnerabilities. You show the world that their words can move you, that their attacks have struck your skin, and once they know you can be moved, they will move you again and again until you collapse. A ruler's greatest weapon is the illusion of indifference. When your enemies accuse you, and you stay calm, utterly unmoved, they grow uncertain. Why does he not respond? Does he know something we do not? Their fear becomes your shield. Their confusion becomes your strength, because the man who can remain silent when others scream is the man they cannot predict. And what they cannot predict, they cannot control. This is why I tell you, never defend yourself. Because every defense is a dialogue with the enemy. Every explanation is a gift of your attention. And attention, when given to your critics, multiplies their power. You feed their existence by acknowledging it. Ignore them, and they starve. Silence, in the hands of the wise, becomes a form of punishment. It is a mirror that reflects their own noise back at them. In the courts of old Italy, silence was not emptiness. It was dominance. A ruler's pause could strike more fear than a soldier's sword. The men who defended themselves were devoured by those who stayed quiet. The more you speak, the more you reveal. The less you say, the more they imagine. And what they imagine is always more powerful, more terrifying than anything you could ever say. Defending yourself is like trying to fight smoke with your hands. You only make it spread. The truly powerful do not explain. They act. They let results speak. Their silence forces others to interpret, to guess, to fear. And in the world of power, fear is far more valuable than understanding. So, when they accuse you, stand still. When they question your motives, smile and say nothing. When they doubt your loyalty, let your silence speak louder than your defense ever could. Remember this: the moment you start explaining, you stop commanding. The powerful do not explain. They exist beyond judgment, untouchable, unshaken. In every corner of history, from the marble halls of Florence to the blood-stained courts of kings, one truth has always ruled above all others: reality is weak, but perception is almighty. It is not what you are that matters, it is what others believe you are. Power does not belong to the most righteous, the most skilled, or even the most intelligent. Power belongs to the one who can control the narrative. And the moment you begin to defend yourself, you surrender that control. When you defend, you become reactive. You allow others to dictate the story, and you scramble to fix the image they have already drawn. But by then, it is too late. The brush is not in your hand anymore. The crowd believes what it wants to believe, and your explanations only polish their doubts. The wise man knows, perception is not to be defended, it is to be crafted. I have seen this play out before my very eyes. A ruler once asked me, "Machiavelli, how do I make them see me as noble?" I told him, "You do not make them see it. Must appear as if they have chosen to believe it themselves. For the more you insist on your virtue, the more you appear desperate to prove it. The moment you plead your innocence, they sense guilt. The moment you try to show purity, they smell corruption." Humans are predictable creatures. Their minds are drawn not to truth, but to drama. They crave conflict, mystery, contradiction, and that is where perception grows. Power is not about being good or bad. It is about being seen as inevitable. The masses bow not to reason, but to image. They obey not because they love the ruler, but because they believe he cannot be defeated. That belief is the foundation of every empire, every throne, every crown. And that belief is shattered the second you start defending yourself. Because defense reveals insecurity, and insecurity destroys the illusion of inevitability. In Florence, those who ruled with silence were feared. Those who ruled with defense were mocked. The crowd always senses weakness. You may be right, but if you look desperate to prove it, your truth becomes irrelevant. The people will not see your honesty. They will see your need for approval. And in politics, needing approval is the death of power. Remember this: your reputation is not your reflection. It is their imagination. It lives in their minds, shaped by what they feel, not by what you say. Trying to defend it is like trying to catch smoke with your hands. You must not chase it. You must control the air around it. The powerful do this by acting with deliberate calm, by speaking less, and by projecting certainty even when the ground beneath them trembles. The greatest leaders I have known mastered the theater of perception. They understood that people are not governed by laws. They are governed by belief. And belief is molded, not by explanations, but by impressions. The prince who looks confident commands loyalty. The prince who looks uncertain invites rebellion. The people do not need the truth. They need a story they can believe in. And if you can shape that story, you can rule their minds without ever lifting a sword. When your enemies accuse you, do not fight to correct them. Instead, allow their words to hang unanswered in the air. The silence will echo longer than your defense ever could. It will make others question the accuser, not you. When you defend yourself, you confirm there is something worth defending. But when you remain unmoved, you appear untouchable, as if their attacks are beneath you. And that illusion of being beyond the reach of others is what keeps the world at your feet. Understand this. Perception is not about honesty. It is about strategy. If you want to be loved, act lovable. If you want to be feared, act inevitable. If you want to be respected, act indifferent. Do not waste your words trying to convince anyone. The crowd does not remember explanations. They remember moments. Give them gestures, symbols, silences that speak for you. Words fade. Presence endures. There is more power in how you stand than in what you say. There is more influence in your silence than in your reasoning. A single act of calm defiance can erase 1,000 accusations. Because perception feeds on emotion, not logic. If they feel that you are unbothered, they will believe you are unbreakable. But if you appear shaken even slightly, they will sense blood in the water, and their doubts will multiply like fire. In the art of power, you must learn to control perception, like a sculptor shapes marble. Every gesture, every word, every silence, each must serve the image you wish to project. You are not defending yourself, you are performing yourself. And the wise know that performance is more real than truth, for truth is silent, invisible, and forgotten. But perception echoes through time. Do not waste your strength chasing the approval of others. Approval is the currency of the weak. Control is the treasure of the strong. Let them gossip, let them accuse, let them misunderstand. While they waste their breath in speculation, you remain still, observing, calculating, shaping what they will believe next. The battlefield of power is not the field of war. It is the theater of minds. And perception is your armor, your weapon, and your throne. When you walk through the world, walk as if every gaze upon you is clay, waiting to be molded. Speak little, but when you do, speak like a man who commands, not a man who pleads. Act as though you already own the respect you seek. For people believe not in what is true, they believe in what appears true. They follow not the most just, but the most certain. And certainty, my friend, cannot be defended. It must be displayed. The weak chase perception. The powerful build it. The crowd worships what it cannot fully understand. Give them a little light, but keep the flame hidden. Let them see enough to admire, but not enough to judge. Because the moment they think they know you, they will begin to control you. The ruler who reveals too much invites his own fall. The one who guards his image as a weapon rules even after he has left the room. So never defend yourself. Shape yourself. Craft the illusion they crave. Build your legend, not on what is true, but on what they cannot stop believing. For in this world, power belongs not to the one who speaks the truth, but to the one who controls what others think the truth is. There is a certain kind of silence that terrifies men more than the loudest accusation. It is not the silence of ignorance, nor the silence of fear. It is the silence of control. When your enemies speak against you and you say nothing, they begin to hear their own echoes louder than your voice. They begin to question themselves. That doubt, that slow, crawling uncertainty, becomes your most loyal servant. You see, mystery is not born from darkness. It is born from restraint. The less you reveal, the more they invent. And in the theater of power, imagination is your most useful ally. I learned long ago that those who speak too often betray themselves. The tongue is a traitor, always eager to expose what the mind wishes to hide. But silence is loyal. Silence protects. When you speak, you give them a path to follow, clues to interpret, patterns to dissect. When you are silent, you give them a void. And in that void, they create stories. The stories they create are far more powerful than anything you could ever say. People do not fear what they know. They fear what they cannot understand. That is why kings wore masks of calm indifference. Why generals stared silently across battlefields before the slaughter began. Mystery makes even the weak seem dangerous. It bends perception, twists emotion, and creates the illusion of depth even where there is none. The man who is silent appears calculating. The man who explains himself appears desperate. Silence turns suspicion into fascination, and fascination is the seed of respect. You must understand this. The human mind cannot stand uncertainty. When you do not answer, when you do not react, when you remain unreadable, they will invent your intentions. They will fill your silence with meaning. Some will believe you are plotting, others will think you are too wise to waste words. Either way you win, because mystery gives you shape in the minds of others. You become not merely a man, but an idea, and ideas cannot be destroyed. In the courts of power, silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. Every ruler, every manipulator, every statesman who endures, learns this art early. The greatest victories are not earned by argument, but by silence. Words can be twisted, misquoted, forgotten. But silence endures. It cannot be used against you because it offers nothing to hold on to. You must learn to weaponize it. When they expect an answer, give them quiet. When they demand emotion, give them calm. The contrast between their noise and your stillness will expose their weakness. Mystery, however, is not born from silence alone. It is sustained by control. You must decide carefully what to reveal and what to hide. Show them only fragments of yourself, enough to make them curious, but never enough to make them certain. The mysterious man is never truly known, and therefore never truly predictable. Those who cannot predict you will always fear you. Fear is the shadow of mystery. It follows it everywhere. In Florence, I once observed a man who ruled through silence. His rivals mocked him, his allies doubted him, yet none could defeat him. He never raised his voice, never argued, never defended himself. He simply watched, cold, still, unbothered, and one by one his enemies destroyed each other trying to guess his plan. They filled his silence with their own paranoia. That is the genius of mystery. It lets your enemies fight shadows while you remain untouched. When you are silent, your absence becomes louder than their presence. Every room you leave speaks of you. Every pause becomes a statement. The more they try to interpret your stillness, the more power you gain. Because attention is power, and mystery is the magnet that draws it. The loud man may win the crowd for a moment, but the silent man haunts their thoughts long after he is gone. Silence also breeds discipline. The one who can stay silent when provoked is not only controlling others, he is mastering himself. Words often escape in weakness, in emotion, in need. But silence requires command. It is the refusal to feed the chaos of the moment. It tells the world, I do not need your approval. I do not need your understanding. And that kind of control terrifies people, because most men are slaves to their own need to speak. When you are silent, you rise above that slavery. You become something different, something dangerous. Understand this deeply. People will always interpret your silence according to their nature. The honest will see it as wisdom. The envious will see it as arrogance. The fearful will see it as power. That is the beauty of mystery. It adapts itself to the imagination of the observer. You no longer have to define yourself. The world defines you in 100 ways, each one giving you more influence than truth ever could. A man who speaks all his thoughts becomes transparent. And transparency is death in the realm of power. They can predict you, manipulate you, destroy you. But the man wrapped in mystery cannot be cornered, because no one can find his edges. He exists everywhere and nowhere at once. When you speak less, every word you do say carries the weight of prophecy. When you move rarely, every step appears intentional. The mysterious man creates gravity. People orbit him without understanding why. There is a silence that is passive, and there is a silence that commands. Learn the difference. Passive silence waits for mercy. Commanding silence forces others to seek your intention. It reverses the roles. You become the questioner. They become the questioned. You will see this in every field of power. The one who speaks least always controls the conversation. The one who explains the most is always losing it. Do not confuse mystery with deception. Deception lies, mystery withholds. Deception weakens trust. Mystery strengthens awe. The deceiver must always invent new lies. But the mysterious man only needs to maintain his silence. His power renews itself in the minds of others, because the more they imagine, the more they fear. And the more they fear, the more they obey. A ruler who masters mystery does not need to shout to be heard. His silence will echo through the minds of his enemies, like a whisper in a dark cathedral. Every accusation will sound hollow in the face of his calm. Every attempt to expose him will fail, because they are fighting an illusion, not a man. That is the perfection of silence and mystery. They make you untouchable without ever having to defend yourself. Power is not seized through armies, gold, or alliances. It is seized through the mind. The battlefield of the powerful is never the land beneath their feet. It is the space inside other people's thoughts. The ruler who understands this never needs to raise his voice or draw his sword, because he commands through perception, through emotion, through fear and fascination. And the first law of psychological warfare is this: never defend yourself, for when you defend, you are no longer leading the game. You are playing by their rules. The art of control begins with understanding one truth. Humans crave reaction. They throw insults, accusations, challenges, not to destroy you but to see if they can move you. Every reaction you give them is a signal, every defense a message. You reveal your weaknesses, your limits, your fears. The man who cannot control his response gives the enemy a map to his mind. The man who remains silent forces the enemy to fight in darkness. And in darkness, power belongs to the calmest soul. I have seen entire councils collapse, because one man could not control his need to respond. The more he explained, the more his enemies learned how to provoke him. The more he defended, the more they sensed where to strike next. But the man who stood still, the one who offered no reaction, confused them. His calm was not peace, it was power. They could not read him, could not predict him. And in their confusion, they destroyed themselves. That is the beauty of psychological warfare. Your silence becomes the weapon that drives your enemies mad. When you refuse to defend yourself, you shift the power dynamic entirely. You force others to speak into the void. They begin to hear the sound of their own voices echoing back. And in that echo, they start to doubt. Doubt is the crack that breaks the strongest mind. Give them nothing, and they will destroy themselves trying to interpret your nothingness. This is not cruelty, it is control. The calm commander does not rush into battle. He makes his enemies fight among themselves first. In this art, every reaction you deny becomes a victory. They will call you arrogant, cold, heartless. But those are the words of people who have lost control. Let them speak. Their noise feeds your silence. Their passion feeds your calm. The more they talk, the more foolish they appear, and the more your stillness begins to look like wisdom. This is the invisible dance of power. One man moves too much, the other not at all, and the one who remains still always wins. To master psychological warfare, you must understand emotion as a tool, not as a chain. Most people are slaves to their feelings. They speak from anger, they act from fear, they justify from guilt. But the powerful see emotion as currency. They decide when to show it, how much reveal, and when to take it away. The art is not in deception, but in timing. A well-placed silence can cut deeper than an argument. A calm gaze can break an entire accusation. When others expect outrage and you offer stillness, their confidence shatters. They begin to question not you but themselves. Psychological dominance is born from composure. If you can remain unbothered when others are consumed by reaction, you own their minds. They will bend around your energy like iron. To a magnet, the world obeys those who appear unaffected, because in the chaos of human emotion, calmness is mistaken for superiority. They will believe you are in control, even when you are not, simply because you refuse to flinch. And that illusion becomes reality, for power is not the truth of the moment. It is the perception of control. In my time I saw this principle practiced by the shrewdest of rulers. They rarely spoke. When accused, they smiled. When challenged, they observed. When threatened, they stayed silent, long enough for fear to bloom in the hearts of their enemies. Every pause was deliberate, every silence an attack. They understood that in the theater of the mind, whoever speaks first loses, because the first to explain, to defend, to justify, is already reacting. And reaction is submission. The moment you start to defend yourself, you hand your opponent your power. You tell them that their words have weight. But the powerful man knows the secret. If he does not respond, the accusation fades into dust. The human mind cannot sustain outrage without reaction. It feeds on conflict. Deny it fuel, and it devours itself. Let them rage into the silence. Let them choke on the absence of your answer. Their noise will exhaust them, while your calm will grow heavier, more terrifying, more divine. Psychological warfare is not fought with aggression. It is fought with control. The less you show, the more they imagine. The less you reveal, the more they fear. Uncertainty is the sharpest blade. People can fight what they understand, but they collapse before what they cannot predict. Your silence, your restraint, your indifference, these are your invisible armies. Let others scream their defense. You stand still and let their noise destroy them. Power is not a contest of truth. It is a contest of belief. If you appear unshaken, you become the truth. People follow calmness, like lost children, seeking safety. They confuse your silence for confidence, your indifference for wisdom. In time, their minds begin to align with your stillness. They start to believe what you allow them to believe. And that is the ultimate victory of psychological warfare. You no longer need to convince anyone of anything. They will convince themselves for you. When you defend yourself, you give your enemies something to push against. When you stay silent, you give them emptiness, and emptiness cannot be defeated. They will swing their swords into shadows, exhausting themselves while you stand untouched. You turn their attacks into noise, their passion into weakness. Every word they speak becomes proof of their own instability, while your silence becomes the measure of your strength. This is how the truly powerful rule. They fight not with steel, but with presence. They wage war not through conflict, but through influence. They do not rush to win arguments. They let the enemy destroy himself in pursuit of validation. Power is not about winning, it is about enduring untouched. And endurance, in the game of minds, is achieved through calm, through silence, through the refusal to explain. Learn to let your enemies speak until they reveal themselves. Learn to let the crowd wonder what you're thinking. The greatest victory in psychological warfare is to make others fear the space between your thoughts. Because once they begin to imagine your intentions, they are no longer free, they belong to you.